Hi, this is Dirt Farmer Maggie from dirtfarmerj.com. Today, I'm going to share a new recipe with you about something that I learned about this summer and we have made a lot, and it is delicious. Stay tuned. Today we're going to make the recipe for calabacitas. And you may think, what in the heck is calabacitas? Well, it is a Spanish dish, and calabacitas, where I think it's just calabas, means squash. Any kind of squash, zucchini, yellow squash, even pumpkins fall into that category. So I've cut up most of the squash already, but I wanted to cut a couple pieces just to show you kind of what I do to make it uniform and easier to cook. So I like to cut it long ways first, and then just take a couple of cuts down the middle, and then just get the little square pieces going there. And you can really actually cut it up pretty fast. The reason I found this recipe this summer was because we grew a lot of squash. I mean, we had squash coming out of our ears. Our neighbors were locking the doors so we wouldn't continue to bring them zucchini. So we were looking for ways to use up this great nutritious vegetable of squash without getting bored with it. So calabacitas was one of the answers, and it's become our go-to dish for us. So I'm just going to cut this other little zucchini. Of course, when you have homegrown zucchinis, they're usually a lot bigger than this because you forget about them, and then you pick them when they're like mango size. So these are little bitty ones compared to what we prepared this summer. So I'm just going to cut up this last one, and then the recipe calls for tomatoes as optional. I love tomatoes, so I put tomatoes in anything I have the opportunity to put it in. And these are aromas that I unfortunately had to buy from the store because we're in fall now and we don't have any tomatoes left here in the Mountain West. So there is the squash. It calls for onions, and this is a little trick that I developed over the years with onions because, you know, it's the juice in the onions that makes your eyes burn. And so if you can keep the juice contained, then, I mean, we can smell the onions in the kitchen right now. I mean, it smells kind of wonderful, but it's not burning our eyes because I wet a paper towel and put it over the top, and then it traps the juice in there. So you might want to try that when you're cutting a lot of onions. So I just left one more tomato here, and I always put my cutoffs in the little bucket for the chickens. And we'll just, people sometimes like to use a serrated knife too. If you have a little bit firmer tomato, the serrated knife works really, really good. This one's pretty ripe, which is awesome because it's going to be super flavorful. So the first thing we're going to do is heat up the pan. I like to use a wok because I can actively stir it and I don't throw things all over the top of the stove. So we're going to start first of all with heating up some oil, 2 tablespoons of oil, and 2 tablespoons of butter. And while that's melting, we'll talk about the process here. This is a dish that you can just make and serve. It doesn't take a lot of time. There are a couple of different sections in here where you're going to want to let something saute for 10 to 15 minutes, but it's a pretty fast dish. So you can kind of do a last-minute dinner entree with this dish. So I'm just going to let this melt down. So you can see that the oil and the butter is nicely melted there. So I'm going to put the onions in first. Get them sauteing a little bit. I've got this on pretty much high heat, so you want to saute this quickly. We'll just get the onions until they are kind of translucent, but not brown. We'll go ahead and put the squash in as well. And then you just toss it around to get the oil as much as you can, evenly distributed. And then we're going to saute this for about 10 to 15 minutes. As you can see, the squash is getting nice and softened here. You don't want to get it mushy. You want it still to have some firmness, but definitely not hard or crunchy. So I'm going to go ahead and add the salt. The recipe's in the comments below, so you can download this recipe to get all the different measurements for the different ingredients. And then we're going to throw in, these are just hatch green chilies that they were canned, they're mild. And it says a lesser amount than I put in, but I like a lot of green chilies. So all these recipes you can play around with, add a little more, add a little less. If it's something you don't like, put a little bit less in. But I love green chilies, and so does my family. So get those green chilies in there. And then we're going to add 2 cups of frozen corn. Now, if you're an overachiever and you want to buy corn and cut it off shuck it and cut it off of the cob, more power to you, but frozen corn works just as well. I'm going to stir that in. And again, we're going to saute this for about another 10 minutes. Okay, so the next ingredient that we're going to add is half and half. This is optional, but I like it because it does add that real creamy texture to it. And then when we add the cheese, it'll kind of make the cheese creamier. It kind of turns into a cheesy cream sauce. So I've got a cup of grated cheese. And we're just going to kind of smooth this in here. Now the recipe that I have said for the tomatoes to add them way back in the process, but I like to add them at the end just because I like to still taste the tomato. I don't want it to turn into mush, so I'll just add it at the very end here. As you can see, that cheese is melting right away, mixing with that half and half. Yummy. The smell is out of this world. And I'm going to put those tomatoes in now just to give them a few minutes to mix in. And then we're going to turn it off and let it sit. Isn't that pretty? All those different colors. It's a very appealing dish. Okay, I'm going to turn it off and we're just going to let it rest. So there you have it, Calabacitas, something to add to your repertoire of culinary delights in the kitchen. If you found this video to be helpful, won't you like it, and better yet, subscribe to our channel, and be sure that you go to the bit.ly link and download the recipe below and try it yourself. Send me a comment and let me know how you like it, and if you tweaked it a little bit and put something else in it that made it better, let me know. Until the next time, this is Dirt Farmer Maggie from dirtfarmerj.com. Bon appetit!